Good evening. Welcome to the March 10th meeting, Board of Education meeting, Clintondale Community Schools. Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Ms. Valerio Noak, are you ready to take the roll?
Mr. Wilson,
Present.
Mr. Maynard,
Present.
Mr. Powers,
Present.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, present. Ms. Wilson,
Present.
Ms. Kaminsky.
Present. Let the record reflect that all 6 board members are in attendance. Agenda is recommended by the superintendent, the Board of Education, that the board approve the agenda as submitted or amended. Is there a motion on the floor to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved.
Ms. Wilson? Is there support?
Support.
Mr. Wilson? Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Maynard,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes, and Ms. Kaminsky.
Votes yes, motion passes 6-0. Approval of the minutes. It is recommended by the superintendent and the board president that the board approve the following minutes: January 27th of 2025, February 10th, 2025, February 19th, 2025, and the policy committee minutes, February 25th of 2025. Is there a motion on the floor? So moved. Is there support?
Support.
Ms. Valerio, no? Is there any discussion? Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Kaminsky,
Votes yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes. Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Maynard,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
and Ms. Wilson.
Yes. Motion passes 6-0. Approval of the bills. It is recommended by the superintendent and the board president that the board approve the bills ending February 14th of 2025. Is there a motion on the floor? President makes the motion. Is there support?
Support.
Mr. Wilson supports. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
I have about check number 125654 on the Throom Law Firm. I noticed that our legal fees, do we receive a printout of what we're paying for? Because I know we just see $10,000, but
Yes,
thank you.
broken down by phone call, text message, email, conversation, negotiation, everything, preparation.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any other further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you take the roll?
Ms. Kaminsky,
Votes yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Maynard,
No.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes, and Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1. Correspondence. It is recommended by the superintendent and the board president that the board accept the correspondence and receive them. Mandy Wise and Sarah Andrews. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Ms. Wilson, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Wilson, is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you take the roll?
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Maynard?
Yes.
Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Valerio now, yes, and Ms. Kaminsky.
Motion, yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Motion passes 6-0. Public comment regarding business before the board. We encourage you to voice your opinion on topics on the agenda. Please,
Superintendent's report?
Right at the bottom.
oh, I do apologize.
Okay.
My gosh.
You almost skipped me from-
I did. How could I forget you? Take it away, Ken.
Thank you. Couple updates. I know I sent it out in the last weekly update, but secure entrances, looking at going out for bid, looking at having meetings, so a lot going on with that. Finishing up that week before, week of spring break, really tying everything up. So I'm looking forward to seeing the progress within there so we can get some ground broke here and get our secure entrance put together. Wanted to talk about some student update things going on. Our current high school robotics students are working hard, and they're creating a hover cart in class right now. Great fun activity with their teachers, so please look for some social media posts from Alex, and if you get a chance to see him testing it out in the parking lot, stop on over. We had 2 days of kindergarten roundup and GSRP roundup right here in our conference center. Numbers steadily increased on the second day, but we're going to continue to encourage families to stop in on our other roundup dates. Alex is going to be posting those here soon and on social media, but we're going to have one over at Rainbow Early Childhood Center as well as the other elementaries just to ease the accessibility for families to get their students enrolled. Please, if you know anyone of school age for the upcoming school year or of GSRP age, so please encourage them to come check this out. Please encourage them to come in early. They get some freebies, they get information about the upcoming school year, and it really helps us to prepare. March is reading month. Hard to believe we're already in March right now. Some of you may be receiving emails from schools, from principals. If you get a chance, board members, I highly encourage you to take a moment to go out and read to a class if you're invited in, whether it's a 5th grade or all the way down to our younger ones. I tend to take one of my favorite books from as a classroom teacher, Stand Tall, Mila Lou Mellon. I've probably read that book hundreds of times over the years, but it's definitely one of my go-to. If you need a picture book from me, let me know. I can always borrow one from my wife as well. She's good on those recommendations. Also look for any other additional information going on there, from celebrations to activities. Please, if you're able to attend any of them, let me know. I can also make sure that Mrs. Wilson keeps us updated on anything going on with March's Reading Month. I'd like to also give a couple shout outs here at the end here for some students and their hard work. First is our Parker students and staff. For those of you that were able to attend, the Voices of the Future, Black History Month concert, and Rhythms of the Past, they did an absolute amazing job. The students up on stage, from our preschoolers and our GSRP all the way up to our 5th grade, the transition, what went into that evening just for them to celebrate was amazing. To stand next to the families in the back and the dads pointing, that's my daughter up there, that's my daughter, pointing them out to me so I got to see as he held the camera there. Just an amazing event, an amazing activity. Standing room only there at Parker that evening. Such a great event. I'm looking forward to next year as that was their first time doing that, but I can definitely see Mrs. Schecht stepping it up even more for next year. Last shout out I want to give to is to Brad Kibbe. Brad Kibbe is a 4th grader at McGlennon Elementary School. He participated in the county spelling bee here a couple weekends ago and ended up being in the top 10. So congratulations, Brad. Brad's mom is actually one of our secretaries, and she got to brag a little bit today as I made my rounds to tell me a little bit how she did. He officially believes he was 7th, but he's classified as top 10. So great job, Brad.
Thank you. Wonderful news. Public comment regarding the business before the board. We encourage you to voice your opinion on topics on the agenda. Please stand and be recognized by the chairperson and state your name and address before commenting. To provide opportunity for all to participate, board policy limits each individual to 3 minutes. To ensure due process and respect of individual rights, the district maintains a formal process for handling complaints against individuals. A problem involving an individual or individuals or specific incident is best handled through administrative channels. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. Speakers should be aware that if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. Is there anyone wanting public comment on things on the agenda? Good evening, Bishop.
Good evening. Bishop Bradley, 22645 Quinn Road, public participation is an item on the agenda. So I want to note, Madam President, that the statement that you read prior to public participation is discriminatory because it was fashioned by the board after the last election when 2 additional members, Powers and Mainers, were seated, the intent of which was to stifle my First Amendment right to speak by being infused with subtle threats of litigation with me as the target, as can be read in the last 2 sentences. Mr. Powers, when he came to this mic and podium at the last meeting, proved my assertion to be true because he blatantly inferred it when he addressed to me. Every meeting that I have ever attended and spoke at throughout this county, a very short statement was read which basically stated that you have X number of minutes and that there would be no response to public comments. But isn't it interesting that here, when whites were blasting the black superintendent using language that was so offensive that an apology was made in the Macomb Daily at the time, the language wasn't changed. And that is why every time that you read that statement, it puts me in mind of the black codes concocted during Reconstruction and segregation to keep Negroes in their place. One of the black codes enforced at that time in Mississippi was that blacks couldn't walk publicly in groups unless there was a white walking with them. So here, in this district, so long as whites blasted whites, there was no change. As long as whites blasted blacks, there was no change. But let a Negro come up and take a sustained position against what he feels to be an injustice, and malicious minds like Powers will concoct threatening verbiage to add to a statement with hints of retribution like the last 2 statements, the last 2 sentences. So, Madam President, when you read that precursor henceforth, call it what it is. Powers gobbledygook to silence a black man, and that is being done in a school district that is predominantly black when it comes to student population, because you don't want to hear what a black man has to say when he wants to say it.
Is there anyone else wishing for public comment for items on the agenda? Seeing none, consent items 1 through 3. Item number 1 is a coach. It is recommended by the superintendent and the director of athletics that the board approve Morgan Gonzalez as junior varsity softball coach for the 2025 season. The rate of pay will be $2,379.84, 6% of step 1 of the BA schedule. Ms. Gonzalez is an instructional assistant. Fingerprints and physicals are already on file with the district. Employee services recruit the strategic goal number 1, employment services recruit and retain talent to support and enhance student success. Item number 2 is a coach. It is recommended by the superintendent and director of athletics that the board approve Taya Peza as the high school junior varsity baseball coach for the 2025 season. The rate of pay will be $2,379.84, 6% of step 1 of the BA salary schedule. Mr. Apiza will be paid by EDGE staff. Fingerprints are already on file with the district. It is also strategic goal number 1, employment services to recruit and retain talent and support enhanced student success. Item number 3 is a maintenance 2 position. It is recommended by the superintendent and the supervisor of operations that the board approve Marcus Jones as maintenance worker level 2, effective immediately, contingent upon approved physical records checks and fingerprints. The rate of pay will be $25.16 per hour, step 3 of the maintenance pay scale. This position was pre-approved by the board. And that is also goal number 1, strategic goal number 1, employment services, recruit and retain talent to support enhanced student success. Does anyone on the board want to isolate any of these items? Mr. Powers?
I'd like to isolate item 3 because it is different in subject matter from items 1 and 2.
Is there a motion on the floor for consent items 1 and 2 and separating item number 3, isolating number
So
3?
moved.
Mr. Powers, is there support?
Support.
Ms. Valerio Noak? Is there discussion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Maynard?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
And Ms. Kaminsky?
Votes yes. Motion passes 6-0. So we go to consent items 1 and 2, the approval of. Is there a motion on the floor to approve items 1 and 2 on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve 1 and 2.
Mr. Wilson? Motions, is there support?
Support.
Ms. Wilson supports. Is there any discussion on 1 and 2? Hearing and,
I'd like
Oh.
to.
yes, go ahead, Mr. Powers.
Thank you. I believe we can treat the 2 of these together as far as I'm concerned, for at least as far as my comment. These are items for junior varsity sports programs. My understanding is that last year there was neither a junior varsity softball program nor a junior varsity baseball program. So I don't know how we could characterize this stipend as one for compensation for services rendered on behalf of an organization that does not exist. If it's been the custom of the district to elevate that person in the event that no junior varsity program materializes to the status of that of an assistant or a second or third assistant coach, and there is a request for compensation and authorization for that, then we should treat it as such and not treat it as a junior varsity position for which there is no junior varsity team. I think that's not only obfuscatory, I think it's misleading to the public. Now, having said that, I understand that today is the first day of tryouts for the spring programs, the spring athletic programs. And I suppose it falls upon the head varsity baseball coach to determine the number of people who come out for that team and the extent to which that if they're not qualified to be given an offer to proceed on the varsity level, that perhaps that they could round out a JV program that would certainly serve a worthy goal of developing a team for the future varsity. But it seems like it might be a little premature for that. So I would suggest that either we approve if we're inclined to approve these, we approve these on a provisional basis to see how the tryout week turns out, and that if a junior varsity team materializes, then no further board action would be required. If on the other hand it doesn't, then we could either do an alternate provisional vote today to say nonetheless they could serve as an assistant at the varsity level, or we can address it at that time, although doing it later might be both inefficient and might serve a delay. So again, I just think in terms of transparency, we should be forthright and say, listen, there is no JV program, but we need an extra varsity coach. That's fine. Let's talk about it at that level. But if there is a JV program, then of course we need a JV coach. If there's no JV coach, then you can't have a JV program. So it seems to me to be kind of a simple issue that's been couched in a way that raises a complexity for the board that I wish it hadn't arisen in that way, because I don't want to be perceived as being in any way discouraging of a baseball program. I played on the varsity baseball team. I was all conference when I was here at Clintondale. I coached in the Birmingham Little League from the age 14 forward. I was offered an athletic scholarship to participate at a D2 interscholastic varsity baseball program at Wayne State University, where I was a pitcher in the 80s and coached my sons in travel baseball, all four of them, for many, many years, both serving as a manager, as an administrator in the Birmingham Little League system, as a volunteer umpire in the Roseville Umpires Association. So I don't think anybody can question my commitment to baseball. In terms of softball, I think that's a close second. And again, no disrespect to the athletic director or to Ms. Walmsley or to Mr. Gonzalez or to Mr. Pisa. Mr. or Ms. Gonzalez, I'm not sure if that's a man or woman, forgive me. Morgan could be, I guess, go either way. So at any rate, yeah, I would love to see a varsity program with a roster of 16 or 17. I guess Dakota High School has 100 kids come out for the varsity program, baseball. I'd love to see a JV roster of the same amount. I'd like to see a freshman roster of the same amount. Same with softball. And I also know what it's like to coach alone. Jim Killen was our coach, and Mark Forber was the coach of the JV when I played varsity, and we had a 14-man roster, I think, at varsity, and Mr. Killen ran the whole program, soup to nuts, all by himself. And same for Mr. Forber. Back, now this is a long time ago, so I'm dating myself. But that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. It's always helpful to have a pitching coach and a batting coach, and somebody to hit fungos, and somebody to be, working on bunt defense plays with men on first and second, or men on first and second and third. So there's a lot that goes into it. I also have the privilege of being personally acquainted with Mr. Apizzo, who I have nothing but good things to say, about whom I have nothing but good things to say. So again, I don't want to be perceived as doing anything to discourage the strength of those programs. But I think if it's not a JV coach position, then we shouldn't call it that. Thank you. For that reason, I'm going to vote no unless there's an amendment to the recommendation by the superintendent. Thank you.
Actually going to have Mr. Walmsley talk a little bit about what would happen in the event that we didn't have enough JV athletes. I know for the softball and the baseball, the interest level had increased, but very similar to classrooms, if we don't have the numbers, we don't have the program. So as we approve here today, which is great and everything, we've got high hopes that we have the same number of kids. We'll have administrators, we'll have athletic director, we'll have coaches talking with kids and continuing to encourage them to be involved. But, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Walmsley?
Well, let me explain where I'm coming from with this, because there's actually two different options for us. You are right on the right track, Mr. Powers. So we had a sign-up meeting for both baseball and softball. Both of them had 20-plus kids sign up. That's not the same amount that when we were in school, Barry, but this is a high number for what we've had in the past few years. So Morgan and Ty are both working to get a couple more kids out that are younger, okay? So that we can have a true JV program. The other option that we have is what they call a varsity B program. So I guess it's up the alley that you're talking about, where you have an assistant varsity. A varsity B program is where on game day, on varsity game day, you play your regular 7-inning game, and then if you have, say, 8 players, once that game's over, you can empty the bench and play 3 additional innings, okay, to where we empty the bench and all those other kids play, all right? And so obviously we'd have to use one more varsity player in order to play the next 3 innings. The other team would do the same thing, and some of the schools that we have in our conference, in our division, are in the same boat that we are. We're not quite sure if we're gonna have a full-fledged JV, or we're gonna have to do varsity B. Okay, so that's why I came to you with this. But both Morgan and Ty are working the hallways right now to try and get more kids out. And like I said, we had 20 plus, right around 20, 21 for each one of them right now. Not all of them have physicals, yeah, but we're working on that. But working on them so that we can have a true JV program. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
I got a question. May I ask?
Yes, go ahead, please.
You can
But-
run a varsity B if you want to also up there.
Well, you know, say
No, you have
Kiteman Road, so.
Yeah.
But is it safe to say that it would be like a safety net if we could vote yes, and then that coach could help out the varsity? Because it's tough for one coach. It is very tough for one coach. So, baseball, 9 players, softball, 9 players now.
Yep.
I get it, one coach, still a lot of students, even if you have, if you have 20 that come out, you're gonna keep how many, 15 kids?
We're gonna keep as many that come out,
Correct.
as many that are eligible.
Correct.
If they show an interest right now, we don't have to cut right now.
Exactly.
So-
So, and we don't wanna cut, of
No.
course. So, if we do not, to make it clear, if we do not have a full-fledged JV roster with a schedule, will those coaches be able to be assistant coaches? And will
Yes,
they be able-
and we will be able to do that varsity B schedule
Correct.
also. I've already been in contact with the other schools that we are in the same boat. We might even play 5-inning games
Correct.
if that'll work.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes to get them some innings.
That's great. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Wamsley.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll for items 1 and 2?
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I did that backwards, didn't I?
yes, and
Yes, you did.
My apologies.
That's okay, that's okay.
We'll start over. Mr. Wilson?
Yes,
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Maynard?
Yes.
Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes. And Ms. Kaminsky?
Votes yes, motion passes 6-0. Consent item number 3 was the maintenance worker. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Ms. Wilson? Is there support?
support.
Mr. Wilson, discussion? Is there discussion on consent number 3? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes,
Mr. Maynard?
Yes.
Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes. And Ms. Kaminsky?
Votes yes, motion passes 6-0. Non-consent items. Item number 1, it is recommended by the superintendent and the director of human resources that the board approve the resignation of Mandy Wise, coordinator of technology, effective at the end of the day, March 7th, 2025. Note, Ms. Wise has worked for the district for 6 months. Is there a motion on the floor? President makes the motion. Is there support?
Support.
Ms. Wilson? Is there discussion?
I have a question, I'm sorry. With the is it okay?
Yeah, go ahead, yep.
Just a real simple question. I look at this being a resignation. How does this meet the goal of employment services, recruit and retain talent? I would say this wouldn't fall there, but
Yeah,
just a question.
yeah, that's,
It's like the total opposite in a way.
right, yeah.
So, I don't know where things
Yeah,
like
no,
that fall.
that should have been not
Yeah.
on the agenda. Thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Maynard?
There's a simple matter with accepting her resignation. Will she be returning the $1,500 stipend, or will that be converted to cash, and she would be 1099 for that stuff?
We dabble expense. I'm gonna go back and read that contract. For that, I know we've already collected technology. I don't have an answer right now in front of everyone.
For the board members that are not familiar, the administrative contract has a $1,500, I believe it's a travel stipend, that's paid, usually the first check in January. And I don't believe all of the administrators took that $1,500, but Ms. Wise did. So that's what he's questioning. Yes, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I guess this is more of a statement. Of course, we don't know when an employee's going to resign. And of course, we're going to miss Ms. Wise because she was technology. But it brings up another thought. I guess I can ask the superintendent to check on this, but the stipend in January, it doesn't make sense. Stipend in January, because now I would assume that travel stipend means she's traveling, and she's technology, so she's probably traveled to all the schools.
Correct.
Yeah, so I guess in the future, we can look at the stipend date. The stipend date, because, I'm sorry, ma'am.
It's in the administrator contract.
So we can look at
Yes,
the date.
yes, I'm, good point. I think it was, it's in the contract, but, I'm gonna leave it there. I think I'm gonna try to leave it there, because although it's in the contract, the stipends aren't paid in January. We end up in a spot like Mr. Maynard is talking about. She's gone, and no one wants to give money back or have a no pay due or $0 when they leave. Of course, we didn't anticipate her resigning, but most contracts end June 30th.
Yeah, the contract, that
And
should have
then
been.
that stipend should have
that
hit June
language.
30th. That language should have been changed. So, we're gonna miss her, and that's not for superintendent. Whenever you can research that, sir, it'd be great. Now that when Mr. Maynard said it, it's a good question.
Did she take the cell phone one as well? No.
No,
And we should also,
we should,
Mr. Superintendent, we should also look at what our legal responsibilities are. If this $1,500 is just flat 15 and we don't have to account for it, we should know that. But if we have to account for it by the administrators turning in their mileage, we should be aware of that.
I have a point of order.
yes, Mr. Powers.
Is it appropriate for any of us trustees to direct the superintendent from this podium what he should or should not be doing? And if I say, I, Barry Powers, direct Mr. Ken Janzarek to do something, that's no different than saying, I think we should do this and we should look into that. There's no mandate that comes from the mouths of any individual trustee to direct the superintendent to do anything, not even to speak at the meeting. We have to ask the chair for permission, if it pleases the chair, to direct a question to the superintendent. And he's not obligated to respond. It's his privilege to do so if he wants to be. And I think we're walking down a bad path here, where anyone can just, if any one of us can just toss out, we should do this or we should do that, and Mr. Janzarek dutifully nods or makes a note. That's not how it works, people, okay? And if one of us starts doing that, then the other one's gonna do it and I'm gonna do it, okay? So it'll be a free-for-all. We have to have order here. And we have a chairman, and the chairman understands her limited function as the person who holds order at the meetings. Not to go in to administrative buildings or to elementary schools or to engage in athletic staff and make advice, take grievances, act as an ombudsman. And that stuff's got to come to an end because it makes all of our jobs much harder. And it's not what our policies provide for, it's not what rules of order provide for. And so I invite any one of my trustees here, not that it's even my position or it's my place to invite anybody to do anything, say what you want, however you feel your job tells you you need to best to do this. But as long as somebody keeps suggesting that the superintendent do this, or that we as a body do this or something, I will continue to object because that person is out of order. Now, the person who made that statement, any one of us here knows that there is a process to do that. The process is to get your item on the agenda. You have to get it to the board, you have to get on the agenda Thursday before the Monday meeting, and there has to be a second. And the item can be raised and discussed and ruled upon, and then there can be a resolution. And we can, as a body, direct the superintendent to do whatever it is in our purview to do that. But I know there's a lot of hurt feelings about the way that some personnel on this board has developed over the past couple of months. And then we had the sad loss of Mr. Manning. And people are seeking to exploit that, to use it as a free-for-all. And we had a couple of rough meetings last time, which I'm not happy about, and I'm sure none of us is happy about. And I specifically made a point on February the 10th about how anguished I was to have to do that. It's not fun. It's not a privilege. It's not something that we get excited about or get much satisfaction from. And I think I speak for everybody here. It's hard, but sometimes we have to do the heavy lifting and the rowing. We have to make hard decisions and have very difficult discussions. But I think we should always do that respectfully and with civility, and I trust my brothers and sisters, we will always do that. But I will, for one, continue to insist on order and decorum, and I think it's extremely disrespectful to the superintendent to just throw out some sort of a proposition in the air, and now all of a sudden I see it on the agenda the next week, when it hasn't even been lawfully put on there. And so I would encourage that we follow the proper protocols and not exceed any one of our own individual, particular respective authorities on the board, and be always respectful to the chair and to the superintendent. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Powers, I would like to address some concerns. I know I have not been stern, perhaps, a strong person at the podium at this time. I will use a little bit more force in discussion, in acknowledging people that they need to acknowledge the president, for questioning, and we'll follow policy, if that answers your question. There is a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion on non-consent item number 1? Hearing and seeing none, Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Kaminsky.
Votes yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Maynard.
Yes.
Mr. Powers.
Yes.
And Ms. Valero now. Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Mr. Janzarek, would you please look into the contractual language and let the board know your findings? I believe now we need to also post for a coordinator. Thank you. Non-consent number 2, resignation, is recommended by the superintendent and the Director of Human Resources that the board approve the resignation of Sarah Andrews, instructional assistant, effective at noon, February 5th, 2025. Ms. Andrews has worked for the district for 5 months. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Ms. Wilson, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Wilson, is there discussion?
Yes, Madam
Yes, Ms.
President.
Wilson?
Just again, the recruit and retain, I just want to make sure when we have resignations, it doesn't fall in that category.
That the proper
Yeah.
strategic goal item, line item, absolutely.
And additionally, Madam President, I'm not sure if this is a role that falls within the administrator contract, I'm not sure, but if it is, if it's another one that we can look into, okay, thank you. All right, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, that's it for me.
Thank you, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes,
Mr. Maynard,
Yes.
Mr. Powers,
Yes.
Ms. Valerio Nauk, yes, and Ms. Kaminsky.
Votes yes. Item is passed, 6-0. Number 3, Title IX Coordinator. It is recommended by the Superintendent and the Director of Human Resources that the Board approve Andrew Lewis as a Title IX Coordinator effective immediately. It is best practice to have both and female Title IX co-coordinator. Is there a motion on the floor? The President will motion. Is there support?
Support.
Ms. Valerio Noak? Is there discussion?
I do have one question.
Yes.
Just for the record, it says best practice to have both a male and female. Who is our female coordinator?
Ms. Heather Halpin?
Okay. I just wanted it for the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Madam President,
Yes, Mr. Maynard, the chair recognizes.
have we ever had both male and female before?
I don't know if I should ask thank you,
Yes.
Lee, yes. For the record, we have.
Still a comment.
Yes, Mr. Powers?
As I understood it, there were gonna be 2 Title IX coordinators, and there wasn't gonna be one to represent one sex and another to represent another sex. They were both gonna represent whatever they have to represent to honor our obligations and responsibilities under the law. So, there's no I just wanna make clear, because, again, Ms. Valero now mentioned Ms. Halperin, and so I don't know if she was a woman to protect girls, whereas there's a man to protect boys, but I think we should disabuse the record of that if that's not the case. That's all.
I think-
So my discussion is that, my understanding of the motion is that it's not dependent on the sex of the coordinators and the sex of the students who are affected by the policy, that the coordinators have the same duties irrespective of what sex they are and of what sex the child is in any given case, unless that is particularly relevant to the decision at issue, which I would assume in this case it probably would be, but most of the time, so, thank you.
Either the superintendent or Lee from Human Resources can correct me, but I believe the intent is that if I had an issue, I might feel more comfortable going to Ms. Halpin. Or I might feel more comfortable going to Andrew.
That is accurate.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
But that's not to say we're setting a precedent that there always has to be 2 different sexes. It could be 2 women, it could be 2 men. I mean, who both can serve those positions, even though that particular feature may not be as well served in the perception of the child.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Yes, Ms. Wilson?
Thank you, Madam President. Apologize if this was written somewhere and I didn't see it. So I'm assuming this isn't a new hire. This is someone currently doing what?
Human Resources.
Doing
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Walsley.
Ms. Wilson, you're correct.
Currently in Human Resources?
Yes, Mr. Lewis is already employed as a human resources specialist.
Okay. And so, now what does this look like for him? Like salary change, no salary change, staying status quo in
Other
salary?
duties as assigned.
Pardon me? Oh, just additional duties.
Yes.
It's not moving into the admin contract or anything like that.
Correct, no.
It's just an individual that's gonna be doing additional duties, no increased salary, no increased pay, correct? So will we be faced with additional salary or additional, pay down the line, because he's like, I'm doing extra duties?
So,
I'm
true
sorry,
policy.
let me direct it to Madam President.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
I don't wanna be called out here. So,
right.
Madam President, so can we expect that maybe down the line, he'll come back and say, hey, I'm doing extra duties, I want more money, et cetera?
Okay. Thank you. I will have Mr. Janzarek go ahead and answer the question.
The reason this is on here is with true and policy, we need to have it identified in our policy manual. So
Okay.
the only reason, there's many times where we always have other duties as assigned. As an administrator, it's in the bottom of your contract, other duties as assigned. But with this one, it has to be in our minutes of being approved, as he is then in the board policy manual for being one of the Title IX coordinators.
Okay, understood.
Yes, Mr. Maynard?
Can you tell me when the last time is that we had two? Because when Mr. Powers and myself came aboard, it was just Mrs. Hicks, Dr. Hicks.
Yes.
And then it was Heather, Ms. Halpin.
Thank you, Mr. Maynard. Lee or Ken, who wants to answer that?
We currently have, I believe, 7 individuals now that are Title IX qualified to conduct investigations, because one Title IX investigation could consume an individual's morning, noon, and night. In terms of the number of people, I don't remember that we ever had to, but I could be wrong.
We did.
We did?
Yes.
Okay, Lee, thank you.
It was Dr. Hicks. She was the coordinator and I was the backup.
So it really, some of these Title IX situations can be extremely time-consuming, and what has to go into it. So having multiple individuals, not only as coordinators but also trained, just allows our administrative staff to continue to grow professionally.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Ken. Is there any other discussion on topic number 3? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Valerio Noak, would you please take the roll?
Ms. Kaminsky?
Votes yes.
Ms. Valerio Noak? Yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Maynard?
Yes.
Mr. Powers?
Yes.
And Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. General public comment on items not on the agenda. We encourage you to voice your opinion on topics not on the agenda. Please stand and be recognized by the chairperson. State your name and address before commenting to provide the opportunity, for all to participate. Board policy limits each individual to 3 minutes. To ensure due process and respect of individual rights, the district maintains a formal process for handling complaints against individual. A problem involving an individual or specific incident is best handled through administrative channels. Speakers are asked to express themselves in a civil manner with due respect for the dignity and privacy of others who may be affected by your comments. Speakers should be aware if your statements violate the rights of others under the law of defamation or invasion of privacy, you may be held legally responsible. Is there anyone wanting for public comment for items not on the agenda? Yes.
Bishop Bradley, again, 22645 Quinn Road. Last meeting, Mr. Powers came to this public mic taking issue with my understanding of his incendiary statements when he said that when he got to this board, he turned on the lights and the cockroaches scattered. He said that he was referencing 3 board members and then named the members who were all white. But there was another board member who, using his term scattered, that he didn't name, who was a board president, who with his vote was removed and who quit. He says scattered, stating that she left because of racism. And Mr. Powers, what was her skin color? You omitted her, and your omission of her is an admission that my interpretation of the statement based on my life experiences was correct. And then when you couple your statement with dog whistle phrases like Mason-Dixon line, carpetbagger, and when looking at the Wilsons suggesting that they were here because of nepotism when they were elected, which defies the definition of nepotism, my life experience tells me what your cockroach reference meant. And let me tell you about my life experience. I don't know if you know this, but when I had to ride as a young lad from the north to the south and the bus or train reached your Mason-Dixon line, we had to get out of our seats and move to the back of the bus or the train. So Mason-Dixon was more than a line to me, sir. It was an insult. And that that demoted board member who you omitted when she left, you said scattered, she said she left due to racism. the director of special ed, black, who left, you said scattered, she said it was racism. The superintendent, black, who was told to go back where he came from, who you're still pursuing, left, you said scattered, and this seems to fit a pattern. And whether you like my subjective analysis about cockroaches, who you said were scattered, I don't care. And you, sir, I believe should be impeached from this board, perhaps by that Constitution that you're always talking about going after Mr. Brodnick about, since you're looking at some kind of way dragging him back and getting him to give this money back that you are just hell-bent on trying to get back. But your collective rhetoric, sir, is offensive to the black community.
Bob Walmsley, Athletic Director here, 35200 Little Mac. I just want to formally thank everyone who participated, donated, had the opportunity to come to the night at the races that was sponsored by the Sea Club. It was a great success. A lot of people, a lot of new faces were in the crowd. A lot of them had no idea what they were in for, but I think they all had a great time. The food was good, the beverages were cold, and we made money gambling for the kids. So, and I know a lot of the coaches are excited about being able to, work with us and try and get some more items for their programs. Okay. One other thing. Good luck tomorrow, Coach Wilson.
Oh, thank you.
I know you're going to need it. You got a tall task in front of you, but
Yes, sir.
Coach Wilson's team is in the quarterfinals of the state basketball tournament.
Yes, thank you. Thank
And
you so much.
playing Orchard Lake St. Mary's. So
Yes.
good luck to you.
Good luck. Thank you so much, Mr. Wamsley. Thank you.
You took away my thunder, Mr. Walmsley.
Yes. I'm already nervous. I'm like,
I did want to sentiment the night at the races. Many of us were in attendance. It was a delightful evening to see so many faces from the past. It's great to see the support Clintondale still has. I want to put a plug. I know the golfing event is last Friday in July. That would be July 25th. And it's eluding me where that event is at. Do we have?
We haven't signed the contract.
Okay, that's, we will announce it. Perfect. The other plug I wanted to do is for next Tuesday, March the 18th, we will be having a celebration of life here in the conference center for Mr. Michael Manning, and that will be at 6 p.m. Michael touched a lot of lives, and it would be really great to have a great send-off for him. So I hope if you're able to, Mr. Manning, appreciate what he did. His family will be there. I invite you all to come. So thank you very much. Anybody else have anything to address? Yes, Mr. Powers?
Madam Chairman, I would like to speak as a member of the community, not as a member of the board, on general public comment. And with the permission of the board, may I stand here at the spot here and speak, or would the board prefer I go to the podium? Would the chair prefer I go to the podium?
I will allow Mr. Powers, with the board's permission, to stay at his seat if that's agreeable to everybody. Does anyone have issue?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr.
Being new, I don't understand public comments coming from the board. Is this the policy, or is this okay? 'Cause I
I'll
don't-
withdraw
excuse me,
the request. I'll
excuse
take
me,
the podium.
excuse me, let me finish.
Mr. Powers?
No, you can,
I'll take the podium.
Let-
Thank you.
let-
I have the floor right now.
No,
and
I'm
I will
talking.
take the podium.
I'm talking right
The
now.
gentleman does not have the floor, Madam Chairman.
Mr.
I'm
Powers?
engaging in public
Mr.
comment.
Powers?
It's a simple matter.
I
The question
apologize.
was, without objection, may I speak for my seat? The gentleman has an objection, I will go to the podium. Thank you. I have the floor, and I will
Madam
Give me, madam, can I
President,
finish?
Yes.
Can I
you
finish?
said for if you have permission from the board.
Correct.
Do we
You
take
are
a-
correct.
Do we take a roll for
I-
that, or
I-
how does that
I
work?
withdraw the request. I'll speak from the podium.
Even speaking from the podium.
Okay, let me look at policy, because I do apologize, people. This is out of, yeah, let me have a 5-minute recess, please, Mr. Powers. Would that be agreeable? I'm calling a 5-minute recess. The board will reconvene at 7:29. Thank you.
I'm just kidding.
Hey. When's that back?
I would, please.
Oh, is Alabama? Is it worse than
It's like
Spirit?
spirit. It's like spirit. You'll be fine.
Board meeting is back in session at 7:40. Mr. Powers, in going through our policy manual, you are entitled to public comment at the podium, 3 minutes, as a member of the community.
Barry Powers, 21360 Sunnyview Street, Clinton Township, Michigan. I have lived at that address continuously since 2016. I also lived there continuously from the date of my birth in October of 1962 until I completed law school in 1987. Please let me know when my 3 minutes start, because I'm going to try to keep track myself.
We started, Mr. Powers.
Right now, or just, oh, so the time that I took to state my address counted?
Yes.
I live in this district. We hear from people who don't live in the district. As a member of the district, and as a member of this board, my name is not fair game for destruction by those who would abuse their opportunity under the general public comment part of the meetings to cast aspersions on my character, my good name, which I've spent my entire lifetime building up. Well, the person is now using my name every time he stands up, and he's used my name at the last 4 or 5 times he's addressed it. And so the person who uses my name, I'm going to use his name. And I believe the fellow was named Bradley. And he's coming with different titles from time to time, apparently. Mr. Bradley, Bishop Bradley, Pastor Bradley. So I will just call him Mr. Bradley. And he's chosen to focus on me as the target of his racial animus. And apparently he has made the assumption in his own heart that I'm of the Caucasian race. And he believes himself not of that race. And so for that reason, he can cast aspersions on my character. And I, for one, have tried my best to tolerate it. I can no longer do so because it's clear that he's going to show up at these meetings time and time again, and he's going to make it all about Barry Powers. He doesn't talk about the board, doesn't talk about the board policy, doesn't talk about board action. He just wants to talk about me personally and cast personal aspersions against me personally. He has in the past thrown out the names Bull Connor, Lester Maddox, George Wallace. He likes to talk about Jim Crow. He likes to talk about the Mason-Dixon line. He likes to talk about the 13th Amendment, the 15th Amendment. But it's all for his own racial animus. And he's even stooped so low as in this last meeting to accuse me of having something to do with the verbiage in the general. I have 2 minutes and 24 seconds, which I started when I spoke. And I had nothing to do with that.
You have been given your 3 minutes.
I have 2 minutes and 34 seconds here.
Mr. Powers, your time started when you announced your name and address. Please return to the board table so we can conduct our business. motion on the floor to adjourn the meeting. Mr. Wilson, support? Second. Mr. Wilson, is there any discussion?